Hello, Central Florida, and welcome to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber. I'm your host, Don Magruder, and you're listening to my 790 AM WLBE in beautiful Leesburg, Florida. I'd also like to welcome our viewers who are watching us today on Lake Sumter Television. That's LSTV, and that's courtesy of Red Apples Media on Bright House 498, Comcast 13, Florida Cable number 4, and CenturyLink Prism number 83. Romac Lumber has been a leading provider of building materials in Lake County since 1945, and for more than 70 years, local residents have come to trust Romac Lumber for all their repair needs before and after the storm. With locations in Leesburg, Mount Dora, the Villages, and Ocala, Romac Lumber truly has the area covered. In October 2016, Lake and Central Florida had a close encounter with a big, mean dude named Matthew, and if not for a little wobble at the last moment, this area would be still re-roofing and rebuilding homes. This was Lake and Sumter County's closest encounter to a monster hurricane since Hurricane Donna in 1960 and the 4 hurricanes in 2004. Hurricane Matthew tested our citizens, our first responders, and local emergency preparedness. As the old saying goes, it got real. Now, hurricane season begins every year June 1st, and it goes until November the 30th, and waiting to prepare for a disaster for you and your family is the wrong thing to do, especially when a hurricane warning is posted. By that time, it's too late. With Hurricane Matthew, we've all found out that taking preparations is serious. Today, we are pleased to have on as our special guest Mr. Tommy Carpenter, who is the Emergency Management Division Manager for Lake County, and we're going to discuss hurricane preparedness and all the information you need to know if and when a hurricane threatens us. Tommy has extensive knowledge and local information on how to prepare for a hurricane and other disasters, and today I believe it's a great time to talk about emergency preparedness, because not only are there emergencies with hurricanes, there are emergencies with terrorism, tornadoes, floods, and other events. So we're going to try to hit everything. With that, it should be a very engaging conversation as we prepare for hurricane seasons, or maybe give you pertinent information for right now. So with that, I'd like to introduce Tommy Carpenter, the Emergency Management Division Manager for Lake County. Tommy, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for inviting me again. I think this is our 4th consecutive year on this program.
And you know, each year we rebroadcast this show right when there's a hurricane threat, and I think it's grown to help a lot of people because, you know, it's just something that's out of mind until it hits you. And you know, as we're talking now, it's mid-June, and we've already had a couple of hurricane or tropical things develop. It looks like it's going to be an active season, doesn't it?
It does. Emergency managers in Florida, we really look at 2 sources, Colorado State University, which formerly was Dr. Gray, and then the National Hurricane Center, and they're both saying an above average year. So we're looking very similar to last year.
And the sad thing, it just takes one.
It does. It doesn't. We don't have to have, in 1992, Andrew, that was a slow year, and it just took Hurricane Andrew to really mess things up.
To get our conversation started this morning, Tommy, won't you talk a little bit about your experience and your team at Lake County Emergency Management Department and what your charge and mission is? I
am very fortunate and blessed to work with a group of professionals that work around the clock for really all hazards preparedness. So today our topic will be hurricanes, but really we address all hazards. So last year with Zika virus and working with the Department of Health and all of our first responders. A year before that with Ebola, and even with special events. We're the only county I know of in the state of Florida that works with permitting special events in unincorporated Lake County, and we work with all of those public safety folks to make sure that we have the safest, most successful events that we can.
Understand that you have a fantastic emergency operations center that when there's an emergency, you're able to activate it and get people together. Talk about the center, but then talk about what's what goes into the activation of that center?
We have a fantastic center. It's the 911 center on the first floor, and then it's the emergency operations on the second floor. 160 mile an hour wind resistance to the structure itself. 4 days generator power if commercial power goes out. But really, it allows us to bring together all the stakeholders, so government, cities, all the different constitutional offices, non-governmental volunteers. Allows us to bring them together and then to collaborate, communicate, and facilitate. And we are really brokers of information. We make sure that people have the information and the resources they need.
Where is this center located at?
We're in downtown Tavares. Anybody that's familiar with the area, right across the street from the big parking garage, 8-story parking garage at 425 West Alfred Street.
Now, Tommy, we're going to have a lot to talk about today, and there's going to be questions. Why don't you give us the rundown of phone numbers and emails and websites so people can contact you or find information about Lake County Emergency Management?
Our office number is 352-343-9420, and our website is at lakecountyfl.gov. And just do a keyword search of emergency management. It pulls up all of our information. And then for email address, we have disasterready@lakecountyfl.gov.
Talked a little bit about the emergencies you work on, but why don't you give us the full scope of emergencies that you, for better choice word, prepare and train for throughout the year?
One of our responsibilities is to update and maintain the county's comprehensive emergency management plan, which addresses all emergencies. So it seems like in those months between December and April, we have the severe weather, and even those strong thunderstorms that come in with 50, 60 mile an hour straight line winds can create just as much havoc as what we prepare for during hurricane season. Also with, as I just mentioned, with Zika, which we're still looking at a pretty busy mosquito season this year.
Right.
And then really with special events, and because we do pay attention to what's going on. We just had the year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, which Lake County was involved with that response afterwards, and just watching and maintaining, working with our cities and our community partners to provide all the help and assistance we can give them to support their events.
Well, unfortunately, it also looks like every day somewhere throughout the world there's a terrorist event, something bad happening. That has to concern you.
It does. We communicate frequently with our partners here in Lake County. The Lake County Sheriff's Office has an emergency management bureau, and my counterpart, I work with him daily. We'll have training coming up for county employees and all employees that almost like the run, hide, fight type training. But it does concern us. We've been very blessed in Lake County, but it's not I don't believe it's a question of if, it's just a question of when.
And then, of course, people fail to recognize what I call the hazmat emergencies. But you had a big one with Blue Rhino, but tanker turning over, gas explosions. Those are big deals, aren't they?
They are. Both, actually, Blue Rhino in July of 2013, and then the Summer Bay sinkhole in August of 2013, and both of them. And when we talk about preparedness, think about being asleep in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning and then something happening where you have to get up and leave your home within 5 minutes. And really think about, do you have everything you need when you have to pick up and leave?
Tommy, I want to go back to October the 5th, 6th, and 7th of last year. You had a monster hurricane out in the Atlantic, and things weren't looking too good. Tell me, first off, how do you rate that threat? Did you see that as a serious threat? And then describe, if you can, what do you think would have happened had the hurricane made it ashore 60, 70 miles in where the eye hitting in Lake County? What would that picture have looked like?
When we made our decision on Tuesday, October 4th, it was the most powerful tropical cyclone on the planet, and it was the size of the state of Texas. And in my career in emergency management, it was the most dangerous tropical cyclone that I had been responsible for preparing for. We were expecting it to come in where we were going to get close to the eye and much, much stronger winds. We were figuring Category 2. So probably somewhere between that 100, 110 mile an hour sustained in East Lake, at least in East Lake County and probably 2/3 of Lake County. And so we knew that between infrastructure, electrical damage, trees, homes, our mobile manufactured home communities, we weren't very concerned about. So we knew that we were going to have a significant recovery period, or suspected that we may have a significant recovery period. And so that's what we were preparing for, gearing up for, and getting, hopefully trying to get everyone ready to get that mindset.
But in your mind, that was a real threat, and it really tested the whole system, didn't it?
It did, and since 2004, we've lost, through attrition, retirement, so much of our leadership in Lake County. So we've had a whole new group of folks, and I won't say amnesia, but we just weren't used to that in Lake County. It's not every year we get something that's close, and we're very fortunate, but it was a very real, it got real. And a lot of folks, in terms of opening our shelters and preparing, and the phone calls that we took from residents in that last week, in those last couple of days up to opening shelters, of just frantic questions. What do I do? And there was real concern of what's in my best interest.
And that's one reason why we're going to go through this show methodically, so that if there is a threat, it can be aired during another time and people can get information. What's the biggest thing you learned from the Hurricane Matthew threat? Is there something that you say, well, I didn't expect that, or I didn't realize how much information we needed to do, or things we could have done better maybe?
We plan for this. We plan for opening shelters. We plan for all those pieces, all those moving parts. But it's really hard to exercise because of the cost, because of just of what it does. But then it was when it happened, and I think a lot of folks realized this is a pretty monstrous piece of preparedness and government public safety that we go through to open shelters, to notify our residents, to get everyone in place, all those folks, all those departments within county government, municipal government, the things and steps that we all have to go through to prepare and be ready for what happens if we do have that monster called Matthew come in and significantly impact us.
What was the most common question you were asked during the height of the threat from Hurricane Matthew?
I was very surprised, but it was, what do I do? Where should I go? What should I do? And it was almost in the phone calls I took, and to the folks I talked to who worked our Citizens Information Line, it was the just panic. What do I do? It wasn't the thought through, let me think about preparedness. Where do I go? Let me get my disaster supply kit ready. It was just people panic because of the seriousness of the threat.
And I guess it needs to be pointed out, I know there's a lot of people who believe that government should have no role in preparing folks for hurricanes, but I think maybe I realize, and you, hopefully you do too, there's a lot of folks who are just, for whatever reason, not able to cope or prepare, or financially able to do anything prepare, especially some of our seniors. Do you find that?
I do. But the one great thing about preparedness is you can, that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So if you take the time to prepare, you can do those little things incrementally along the line to help become more prepared, instead of that last minute rush. Oh my goodness, what do I do? I've got to spend all this money to get ready. What
was the biggest mistake most of our citizens made?
I would say, I don't know if it's a mistake or they just weren't expecting the seriousness of this.
Okay.
I think it was just most haven't been through it, or they just weren't expecting this.
Tell us a little bit about this Lake Alert system, Tommy.
Alert Lake. That is Lake County's emergency notification system. Last year, the Lake County, we entered in a contract with the state of Florida. And Alert Lake is a generic name, but the service provider that provides emergency notifications is called Everbridge, and the county gets it at no charge. And it's probably one of the best systems in the nation. And what it does, it allows for those who register, actually on their home phones, they'll get notifications for tornado warnings.
But that's the hardline phones.
That's the hardline phones. So folks with cell phones, we need you to register.
So if you have one of these smartphones or cell phones, how do you register it so that you can get alerts straight from the Lake County Emergency?
You go to alertlake.com. So we were able to get that domain name. You go to Alert Lake, you're able to register, and we know that we have residents that don't have access to internet, so if they call us, then we'll get them registered.
So they go to alertlake.com, alertlake.com.
Correct.
And that's where you can register your cell phone. And I take it you won't be spammed or anything like that?
No,
It will only be used if there's an emergency here in Lake County. You'll get official notifications straight from your office.
That's correct. Emergencies only.
You're listening to Around the House. Our special guest today is Tommy Carpenter. He's a division manager for emergency management here in Lake County. We're talking about emergencies, focusing a little bit on hurricane season. Hurricane season goes between June 1st and November 30th, and we got a lot to talk about. Hurricane season, of course, has begun. Let's talk about what we're supposed to have in the family's emergency kit. That's where a lot of people fail. They don't realize that kit is not just for when a hurricane threatens. If tomorrow there's a blue rhino explosion or something, you need to have a kit prepared. Tommy, won't you take a few minutes and talk about what's in the kit? And I guess, by the way, you have outstanding literature and information on the website to detail on all this, don't you?
We do. Our website is lakecountyfl.gov. And if you just keyword search emergency management, you can pull up all of our brochures that has every bit of information that you could use for preparedness. But in terms of our disaster supply kits, and this is one of the things we learned after the Blue Rhino and the Summer Bay Resort, is those suitcases that you can get at Walmart that have wheels make the best ones, because you can pick them up and you can just wheel them right along. But you want to think about 3 to 5 days of being able to, what you need to sustain. Now, that's water. That's a gallon of water per person per day. Non-perishable foods.
So your recommendation, 1 gallon of water, drinkable water.
Drinkable water per
person per day.
Correct.
So if you're a family of 4, that means you got to have 16 gallons of water.
Total, yes.
That's a lot of water.
It is, and it takes up room, and it's heavy. So you have to think about how am I going to carry it? How am I going to move it? What am I going to do with it?
Okay. What else should you have in that kit?
Non-perishable food, so something that doesn't have to be refrigerated, something that doesn't have to be heated, something that is very easy to carry with you. One of the most popular things that we found at Walmart sold during 2004 was Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Strawberry Pop-Tarts were the favorite because it took very little to open them up and to eat them. Manual can opener, so if you have canned goods, make sure that you have a manual can opener. Personal supplies, if you have infants or seniors, things that they may need to take care of them. Pets are very important in Lake County, so to make sure you have food and water for them. If you're going to go to a shelter, that you have the crate, that you have vaccination records, everything up to date.
So that whole kit needs to be available, where if tomorrow you got a call from the alert system said you've got to evacuate now, you're under extreme danger, you can grab it and go in. And it should also include hygiene products, everything that
Absolutely. Everything that you're going to need. Think about if you had to go to a hotel or a shelter or somewhere other than your home, that where you're going to have to bathe and take care of yourself, and you may be there for a day or two.
After the hurricane, there's a lot of needs, or after emergency, there's a lot of needs. Let's sort of talk about some of the things that maybe are not in the kit, but you should have around the house. One thing comes to mind, water to flush toilets.
It does, for those folks on a well, that when the power goes out, they don't have. So if they have water that they can just pour in the tank, flush toilets. Most of our municipalities, all their generators are backed up, or their sewer and water systems are backed up on generator, but it's still probably not a bad idea to have that in case those go out. NOAA weather radios, or battery-powered NOAA weather radios, are absolutely important. Flashlights, especially now, these LED flashlights, the batteries last forever. They really are a good tool. And then whatever you use to get your favorite local media. So be that radio, or now they have the new digital TVs with the antennas that are relatively inexpensive. You don't need cable. You can pull it right up and watch your favorite media outlet.
There's also special concerns about medicine. Now, there's particular rules here in the state of Florida about refilling medicine and stuff. Do you have any idea what those are, Tommy?
Those are, if there's a state of emergency issued by the governor, if there's a local state of emergency issued by the county, or if the county's activated their emergency operations center, then residents can go and get another 30-day prescription refill. Even if they're 2 weeks into their prescription, they can get an additional 30 days, except for those Schedule II type narcotic medications. But most medications will be covered, and they can get those filled.
Plus, you have to have fuel in the tank, because if power gets knocked off these stations, they may be out fuel for 2 or 3 days. And how do you feel about fuel being stored at a home, additional fuel?
I think in everything we've seen and information we have, gasoline is going to be probably the most scarcest commodity. So making sure that your fuel tank is full ahead of time, and if you have the capacity to safely store fuel in a shed, in an outbuilding, because of the fumes, you don't want to store it in your home, but if you have the ability to safely store it, then it's not a bad idea to get a couple 5-gallon cans and fill them up.
There's also a situation if you have a grill.
Mm-hmm.
You want to fill that propane up, maybe get an extra tank.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I know that's not on a lot of people's list, but bags for trash.
Mm-hmm.
Because there seems to be a lot of trash. And then you've got the generator and chainsaw issue. Many people have generator and chainsaws that are sitting in the garage, but if they're not tuned up and ready to go, you should do that yearly, because that they won't work on sitting up, will they?
No, they sure won't. They won't work when you need them.
It's a lot to remember on the checklist, but once again, you have a checklist on your website. What's your website address?
It is lakecountyfl.gov, and then in the keyword, just put emergency, and you can pull up all of our brochures.
You know, as you think about hurricane preparedness coming into this year, what's your biggest concern?
Well, I'm very pleased. We have our number of public presentations to communities have tripled since Matthew, and it started directly after that. So I think hopefully Matthew did what it was supposed to, and that's draw folks' attention to this time of year and to preparing.
So you're available to go visit with senior groups and
we do
various groups and talk about the things they need?
Absolutely, we are.
How do people arrange that?
They can call our office at 352-343-9420 and just let us know what the date is, where it is, and we'll be happy to come out and speak to that group.
And one thing we need to talk about is when do you activate the Emergency Medical Center?
The Emergency Operations Center, what we would do for a hurricane is really all based on forecast. So what we look for, our magic number, is when Lake County is going to receive those tropical storm force winds sustained, 39 miles an hour and higher. So once we know that number of when that's going to occur in Lake County, we start working backwards. So we want at least 72 hours prior to that so that we can go ahead and activate. Our plans are already in place, but that's where the Emergency Operations Center will go to a level 2. Our call center will open. We start getting shelters ready. And then in that last 24 hours, we go to a level 1, full activation. Our shelters are open and everybody's in place.
Now, the state has a different standard. I know the governor can declare a state of emergency, and that when he declares a state of emergency, that sort of puts everybody in the whole state on notice, right? Even though there's a hurricane maybe hitting Miami and there's going to be minimum, but because a state's evacuating, doesn't the rules apply for everybody?
They do. So Tropical Storm Colin last year, I think it was June 1st, the governor had the entire state under a local state of emergency, which included Lake County, and a lot of folks wanted to know about shelters and evacuation, even though we weren't directly impacted. So we know that once that occurs, and we may have a Florida impact, that we may have folks coming from the area forecasted to be impacted toward Lake County.
Now, can the state direct Lake County, say there's a massive hurricane hitting in South Florida, can they direct Lake County to open its shelters for South Floridians?
What we would do, we would prepare to host them. We've never had that issue where they've had to direct us. If we knew there were going to be an issue in the planning, then we would certainly be prepared for them.
Let's talk about the importance of having your insurance documentation and your paperwork and your identifications. It never fails. People in this day of cell phones and stuff, they leave their hard identifications, they don't print out paperwork. They're on cell phones, but if these die or have problems, you really do need your hard copies, don't you?
You do. And thinking about that scenario, those folks that live around Blue Rhino or had to evacuate, think of all those papers, insurance, marriage licenses, birth certificates, things that feel irreplaceable or that you're going to need to start over, cash, all in a waterproof bag that you can just pick up and walk out with. if you had to leave your residence and start over.
And that's the thing about it. If you have no cell phone service and power out, the only way you can probably transact business is doing cash. And, I know after a typical major hurricane, it may be 3 or 4 days before you have cash.
It could be.
Plus another thing is ice. Mm-hmm. There's just as short as gas is as short as ice. And after a hurricane, the heat is overwhelming, isn't it?
It is. And that's one of the things I think the state learned after 2004, where they did food, water, and ice. And I don't think if that, God forbid it happens, but if it does, I don't believe the ice is going to be one of those things they bring us. It's going to be food and water. So that's one of the things that folks really need to prepare for, is hopefully getting the power back as quick as possible. But if you need ice, to prepare for that.
Tommy, when we come back in our next half hour, we're going to talk specifically about shelters. So I don't want to dive into that now, but as people think about going to a shelter, what should their frame of mind be? A shelter's not a hotel room, is it?
It is not. It is communal living at its very best. It's safe. First and foremost, it's safe, but it's not what a lot of people think it is going to be.
Well, when we return, we're going to talk a lot about shelters, because that was the biggest question during the last hurricane threat. We're going to talk about pet shelters, pet-friendly shelters, and got a lot to talk about. So please stay tuned. It's a very important conversation. See you in a moment. Welcome back to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber. I'm your host, Don Magruder, and you're listening to my 790 AM WLBE in beautiful Leesburg, Florida. You can catch Around the House on my 790 WLBE every Monday from noon until 1 p.m. and also catch Around the House on there nightly on LSTV, and Around the House, the column, Wednesdays in the South Lake Press and Saturdays in the Daily Commercial. If you're watching us today, you're doing that courtesy of Lake Sumter Television. That's LSTV. Courtesy of Red Apples Media on Bright House 498, Comcast 13, Florida Cable 4, and CenturyLink number 83. We're having a great discussion today. We're talking to Tommy Carpenter. He's the division manager of the emergency management group here in Lake County. And we're talking about all things hurricanes, and we're also going to dive into some other emergency situations. And right before the break, Tommy, we're about to tie into shelters, because shelters is the number one issue during a storm. People don't think about shelters until they hear a 120, 30-mile-an-hour storm may be approaching. First off, I'm going to ask you the golden question. Who should go to a shelter?
Great question. And that's one of the things we try to really instill in folks, thinking about ahead of time. Think about where your home is. Is it safe? If you live in an unsafe structure, my mom lives in a home that's 100 years old, we know it's not the safest structure. Manufactured mobile homes tend not to be the safest structures. So we ask folks to think about, if you have family, friends that live in a site-built home, go there. If you have nowhere else to go, then a public shelter is available.
Okay. I want to dive into this just a little bit, because you've a lot of people say, well, does it apply to me? First off, if you're in a manufactured home that's older than like 1999 or 2000, the chances are is your home has not been properly tied down to new codes. So I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but if I'm sitting in a mobile home, say 2000 or older, I'm probably going to evacuate. Would that be a good idea?
For all of us emergency managers, we really have to say the same thing, and that's, it's not a good idea to be in a manufactured mobile home during a hurricane.
Yeah.
So, you have the expertise on the building side, but I wouldn't want to be in an older structure,
or even a newer one. But I guess what I'm trying to emphasize, if you're in an older one, consider this. 2000 or so, they upgraded the tie-down codes. Yours probably was not upgraded, so you're even in more jeopardy.
Correct.
All right. Older structures that are older than 1990, especially 95, 96, don't have the hurricane clips and the tie-downs. Now, I understand. I hear this all the time. Well, this house has been sitting here 100 years, but maybe in the 100 years they didn't have this hurricane hit. Hurricane Matthew would have been a once in every 100-something year event. those are reasons to leave a house, correct?
They are.
If you're living in a low-lying flood area that could flood, now you don't have a problem with storm surge here, but torrential rains and the inability to get people, where would those flooding areas be, Tommy?
Those areas typically, I want to go back to about the flooding, the St. Johns River and Astor. We actually had to issue a voluntary evacuation order because the Weather Service expected those homes along the river to flood. They said 6 feet of inundation based on how bad Matthew was initially forecasted. So those areas, and folks know, hopefully every year they go get that insurance adjustment, and it's a great time to ask your insurance person, do I need insurance? Because that person will be able to tell you, well, based off those FEMA flood maps, which they have updated, it's a quick Google search. If you have internet access, you can go right to it. But I always recommend folks talk to your insurance agent. Let them, find out what it is that you need in terms of flooding and where your property is if you need flood insurance.
So we've talked about people in mobile homes probably should evacuate, older homes that are not up to code, flood areas. What about people who have medical issues that need electrical support and those type of issues but can't go to a hospital? For example, you rely on oxygen or some other device to keep you alive or to supplement you. Should they evacuate? They
should. So they need to be prepared. So what is it in terms of their oxygen provider? Can they get additional tanks? Do they have the oxygen that they need? And those folks understand that if my power goes out, my oxygen concentrator is not going to work. So I need to either go somewhere where there is power, or I need to have ample oxygen with me. If my home's safe, it's just a power issue. So our Lake County Special Needs Program is geared toward just that, of getting folks that have those electrical dependencies and getting them into a special needs shelter. If we do open shelters so that they're in a school with a generator, power goes out, then that generator kicks on and it can provide that power for that oxygen need.
And we'll talk a little bit more about how you get into these special needs areas. Let me ask you about this type of evacuee, though. Maybe it's a senior citizen, a widow or widower, who is by themselves. They're terrified. They don't feel comfortable. Maybe they're in a well-built home, but they're anxious. They don't know if they're real scared. Can they evacuate?
They can. They can go to any of our shelters that are available if they have nowhere else to go. They're welcome to come. We have 9 primary shelters, and I can give you that list real quick if you're
Please.
ready.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our shelters in Lake County are public schools, and they're all in elementary schools. And they are as follows: Astatula Elementary, Leesburg Elementary, Lost Lake Elementary in Claremont, Mascot Charter Elementary, Round Lake Elementary just outside of Mount Dora, Spring Creek Charter Elementary in Paisley, Treadway Elementary here in Leesburg by Viaport Mall, Umatilla Elementary, and Villages Elementary. Of those 9, all of them are pet friendly, and we know that's important to folks that have pets that don't want to leave them at home, so they can bring their pets. And our special needs shelters are the ones where they would work with our office in getting their registration done. The health department looks at all those applicants and determines medical need. Those that are deemed medically necessary and that are part of our special needs shelter, we then communicate back with them. We give them all the information, and then we tell them what shelter they go to that's a special needs shelter.
And I think that's real important. You cannot determine you're in need to go to a special needs shelter the day before the hurricane strikes.
You cannot.
So you have to do that now. And once again, what's the first step in registering for a special needs shelter?
Call our office, 352-343-9420, and we'll be happy to help. We'll give you all the information you need.
So you can fill out a form, get the health department to review it, they'll sign off, get put on a list. That way, in the event of a major disaster, you'll have a place in the end to go to a special needs shelter.
That is correct.
You're listening to Around the House. We're having a great discussion with Tommy Carpenter. He's the manager of emergency management right here in Lake County. We're talking about disasters and preparing. And right now we're talking about shelters. Now, the biggest thing during a hurricane we see in evacuations is most everyone has a little doggy or cat they don't want to leave behind. And I've seen people put their lives and the lives of their family in peril because of an animal. people claim that this little dog or cat's part of their family, and I know there's an emotional connection, but I'm going to give an opinion now. You should never put your life in peril for an animal, but I understand where people come from. But so what's evolved is pet-friendly shelters. But they're pet-friendly, but don't mean that they're pet and owner-friendly, meaning that you get to stay with the animal.
That's correct. So how this works, all of our shelters are pet-friendly, and you need to make sure that the animal has a crate, has food, has water, up-to-date vaccination records. They're kept in a separate area, and the owner's welcome to stay with the pet as long as it's safe. The owner's going to have to go out and feed the pet, water it, let the dog, cat, pet take care of its business. And then when the weather becomes unsafe, then the pet goes back into the crate, into the area where the pets are. And then the owners go back to the area where the people are. And then once the weather has gone away and it's safe again, then they can go back and get their pet.
I guess the most important thing to remember about pet-friendly shelters, even though your little dog may be gentle in your eyes, there are dogs and cats that are not. And putting it around other people put other folks in peril. So you have to, talking about the county, you guys have got to err on safety for all. That's the reason for the separation, isn't it?
It is, and believe it or not, we get a large number of phone calls when we talk about pet-friendly shelters. Their folks are allergic. They can't, the dander, pet dander, they just don't tolerate well. So in the best interest of everyone, it's better to have those pets separated where they're not freaking out when they see a lot of folks they don't know. And it works better in those environments when they're separated.
So let's go through this again. What do you need to do to bring your pet to the shelter?
You need to make sure there's no pre-registration required, which we get asked a lot. Make sure that your pet is in a
So it's no pre-registration required?
None. No, they don't have to be pre-registered. Just make sure you have a crate.
Crate?
Up-to-date vaccination records.
So if you don't have up-to-date vaccination records, right now you need to call your vet and get that done.
Absolutely.
Put it in hand. Put it with your emergency supply information.
Absolutely. That's going to be one of the things that you take with you when you go.
Yep.
Food and water.
Food and water.
And their bowls.
Their bowls.
Folks forgot those. And then any toys that the pet likes.
Something to keep them occupied.
And even the bags for when they have to go do their business. If you've got some of those, that's great too, because where these pets are going to be public facilities. So anything that you would need to take care of your pet in an area away from your home. So even though it's not a hotel, you are taking a trip.
So you will be able to see your pet in the pet area. You'll be able to walk your pet as long as the weather permits and it hadn't gotten bad. But once the weather reaches probably tropical storm force, the pet will have to be put up and you will have to go in for a human shelter.
That's correct. Yes, once we get those sustained tropical storm force winds.
Let's talk about something else at the shelter.
Okay.
It doesn't have food, doesn't have water, don't have snacks, don't have bedding. Talk about all the things you need to bring to a shelter.
It is. Shelters are safe. I'll say that first and foremost. But we had a number of folks that were surprised. They thought there were going to be cots there. There were going to be hot meals. Our schools do prepare to serve meals, and that may be twice a day. If residents want to bring snacks, they're welcome to. But just a list of items, which is in one of our brochures online: blankets, pillows, sleeping bags, your medications, at least a 2-week supply. Doesn't mean you'll be there, but you have it. Toiletries, clothing, books, toys, anything to keep your time occupied. Again, and what we look at when we determine space, we go by American Red Cross. It's 20 square feet. So you can measure that, think about that however you like.
That's a 3-foot by 7-foot area.
Per person.
Per person.
So you've got enough place to lay your sleeping bag down and your pillow down, and that's yours. Because if we're putting 1,000 people into a school, then it's going to be tight quarters, and it's a state of emergency. It's a time for our shelters are really our last
shelter of last resort.
That's exactly right. We want people to plan to go somewhere else. They're not comfortable, but they'll be safe. So
essentially what you're providing people at a shelter is a cold concrete floor.
That is it. A safe cold concrete floor.
Safe cold concrete floor.
Yes, sir.
And you're just not able to do the rest of it because of the nature of storage and all that type of stuff.
That's correct. We can't afford to buy the cots. There's nowhere to store them, and thankfully we opened shelters in 2016, and the last time we opened them before that was 2004. So we just know that this is a preparedness issue, and that we know that if we can continue to communicate strong with our residents and have them work during the year to figure out, where do I want to go? I need to be safe, but I don't really want to go to a shelter if I don't have to.
All right, so let's go through the list of shelters again.
All right. All of our shelters are elementary schools, and it's Astatula Elementary, Leesburg Elementary, Lost Lake Elementary in Claremont, Mascot Charter Elementary, Round Lake Elementary outside of Mount Dora, Spring Creek Charter Elementary in Paisley, Treadway Elementary here in Leesburg, just close to the Veriport Mall, Umatilla Elementary, and Villages Elementary.
And all are pet friendly, but to bring your pet, you're going to need a crate.
Correct.
Food.
Correct.
Water. Food and water bowls. Leash. Anything else. The animal will be separate from you, but you can go visit and walk the animal. Then when you come into the shelter, you're going to get a 21 square foot area, 7 foot by 3 foot area, that you're going to be able to put your pallet down or your sleeping bag, and you're going to need to bring your own food, your own water, your own snacks, your own things to occupy yourself, but you're going to have a safe spot. The other thing about shelters, what are the rules for people at the shelters? There will be security from the Lake County Sheriff's Department, won't it?
There is, and another preparedness part I'm very proud of. Our Lake County deputies, our school resource officers, work as our shelter managers. So they've all been trained in American Red Cross shelter management, but they manage the dormitory side of our shelters. So we've had great success. They had great interaction with our folks seeking shelter last year, but there is security. And then during the daytime, there are rules. And then at nighttime, when lights are out. And so it's one of those things that we just have to keep common rules and really hope folks are are being courteous and obeying the rules, so that they can get through their time and it's as pleasant experience as possible.
Now, what I'm told, there's no smoking in the shelters?
That's correct. There's no smoking in any of the public buildings. I know that the principals have worked to have an area outside where those folks can go when it's safe to do so, that they can smoke.
No alcohol?
No alcohol.
No drugs?
None.
No illegal drugs, let's qualify that. And what about weapons?
Weapons. So some things changed last year where the governor has allowed, during orders of evacuation, you can carry your weapon if you don't have a concealed weapon permit. So one of the great things that I like about having our sheriff's office folks managing our shelters is we've built armories in each one of our shelters. So we know someone's going to bring a gun with no bad intent. They're worried, and I'm leaving home and I got to take my gun, and they're going to walk in and they're going to see the look of horror on their face when they figure out they have it. Those deputies can take that gun, they can secure it, and then when it's safe to do so, when everybody's leaving, they can reissue that firearm back.
Because it is important that you secure that firearm, because some child get it or something like that. That could be a bad situation.
It could.
So that gives us everything on our shelter information. Any other last minute tips for someone who's planning on sheltering?
This is the time to prepare. Again, it is communal living at its best. I would do everything in my power, especially if you have family or friends that you're not getting along with. This is a great time to make up, because if you have to go through that, you want to be with family and friends. You don't want to be with a bunch of strangers you don't know. But again, you're welcome to call our office or on our website those things that you can have ready if you have nowhere else to go to take to a shelter with you, and just understand that it's going to be communal living. Okay.
Let's go back to some of the other disasters that we've been having around, that we've experienced here in Lake County. A lot of issues with tornadoes around here. What can people do to prepare for tornadoes?
Well, the thing, I think, since the Groundhog Day tornadoes of 2007, regardless of what your favorite TV station is, all the meteorology and all the weather forecasting is spot on. And this year, it was in January when we were forecast to get severe weather. I was in the Emergency Operations Center. We had it spun up because we had a forecast of potential bad weather. And I looked at all the stations, and they're all phenomenal. They all provided, you could see with their radar block by block. It really was a sight to see how well they did it. But it goes back to preparedness. We know in a day or two in advance if we're going to get bad weather. So be aware, be informed, understand what's going on, and then it goes back to, well, where am I going to be? Am I in a safe place? Where in my home is the safest place to be, which is an interior room with no windows.
And after the storm, it's some of the trickiest. In fact, a lot of people argue more people are killed and hurt after the storm trying to do cleanup because they're not used to using power equipment and generators. Talk a minute about power tool safety and generator safety, Tommy Carpenter.
It is. Power tools, folks that don't use chainsaws every day, that's one of you want to make sure it works, but you want to make sure you know how to use it. So if you don't know how to use it, find somebody else that does. Generators, 2004, we did have a death in Lake County because of someone didn't vent it properly. So we want to make sure that everyone knows how to use that power equipment and that's well versed in it and not just trying to figure it out as they go along.
Any power equipment running, generator, gas power, should be on the outside of the house. You should never have it inside.
Absolutely not.
The other issue is sanitation. Sanitation's a big deal, isn't it?
It is huge. And I'll tell you, we had a little issue with that in Matthew because the power was out in Astor. And the way that their system works there, only being on generator power, they had no issue getting water to the home. It was the sewer side they had issues with.
The pumps.
And so that was, we worked real well with Clay Electric to get them up there and get that power turned back on because that was our primary issue was the sanitation side, making sure that everything that needed to leave the house went where it needed to go.
When you think about this hurricane season and all the things that are going on, what is your best advice for people right now to prepare?
Make a plan. So that first thing is determine where you are. Do you live in a safe structure? If you don't, then figure that out now. Where are you going to go? Having that disaster.
Part of that plan has to include a communications plan with families and friends, doesn't it?
It does.
Talk a minute about that.
Okay. So communication plan communication now is easier than it's ever been between smartphones. Craig Fugate, when he's administrator of FEMA several years ago, texting works on a completely different technology. So if all the phones are out, text will still get through. Social media, being able to communicate via social media where you are. But we want to make sure that folks that live in Florida that have friends and family out of town, out of state, out of country are very familiar where you are and how you're going to communicate.
But on the other hand, be careful about social media because a lot of times you get bad information, don't you?
You do. You have to be very careful in terms of what the information is. You have to weigh the source and be very careful and not just believe anything that you see.
What concerns you? Now, let's move away a little bit from tornadoes and hurricanes. What concerns you most in disasters that people don't think about normally? In other words, what sort of keeps you up at night?
The preparedness. Post-disaster, we'll make it through. We have a phenomenal public safety community, dedicated public servants. We'll get through. It's the preparedness part. Folks thinking about where they are, where they're going to go, what they're going to do. That component of life safety when the disaster comes.
What about disasters like school and church shootings and terrorist attacks and stuff? What are some protocols people should have in mind to prepare for those things?
I think the program that came out several years ago, I think, is a great common sense approach. Is if you see something, say something. So when you go out, just be vigilant, be aware, and if you see something that doesn't look right, say something. And it's one of those things I would much rather apologize to someone up and down for making a mistake than not saying anything and then the worst happening.
Tommy, we've got just a few moments left, but let's talk about these shelters one more time because that is a big deal for a lot of people. What are the shelters and when do they get activated?
Okay. Our shelters, so once we know that we have a threat, we start the preparedness process then, because it's a lot of moving parts to get those going. Typically, we'll have those shelters open between 12, closer to 24 hours prior to landfall. It's the timing of it. All of our shelters are in public elementary schools, and they are Asdatula Elementary, Leesburg Elementary, Lost Lake Elementary in Claremont, Mascot Charter Elementary, Round Lake Elementary just outside of Mount Dora, Spring Creek Charter in Paisley, Treadway Elementary here in Leesburg close to Viaport Mall, Umatilla Elementary School, and Villages Elementary.
And all are pet friendly. And to bring a pet, what do you have to bring again?
Correct. All are pet friendly. And if you're going to bring a pet to a shelter, make sure they have a crate. Their vaccination records are all up to date, that you have food and water for them, their bowls, any favorite play toy, chew toy, and anything that pet needs. If the pet has medications, make sure that you bring anything that you would take for your pet if you were going to have an overnight stay at a hotel.
And if you evacuate to a shelter, what should you bring as a person for yourself?
Remember, it's 20 square feet, so you mentioned about a 3 by 7 foot area. There are no cots, so you're going to get a hard floor. Blankets, pillows, sleeping bag, your medications, toiletries, clothing, books, anything that you would need to keep yourself occupied. Nowadays, there probably won't be internet, so for some folks that rely on their smartphones and internet, you're not going to have that available.
And Tommy, real quick, what's a good number and website address for your group to get information?
Number is 352-343-9420, and our website is lakecountyfl.gov.
Thank you, Tommy Carpenter, for being our guest today. We learned a lot about emergency management. Thank you for watching Around the House today. Be sure to catch us every Monday from noon to 1 p.m. on My 790 WLBE, weeknights on LSTV, and catch Around the House, the column, on Wednesdays in the South Lake Press and Saturday in Daily Commercial. Until next week, we will see you around the house.